Podcast is for CNT140. We're looking at Chapter 10, Open Office Wiring. This is a relatively short one, but you do encounter this, so we need to at least touch on this on how you deal with this kind of special environment. What we're looking at is modular offices and how to deal with cabling in them. And what they mean by modular offices or open offices is this kind of environment where you have, kind of a one large room with many cubicles in, no distinct walls. Everything is just modular. A lot of businesses use this because things can be moved around, rearranged, that sort of thing. I think of my brother that does software consulting. As he gets done with one job or one client, they often move things around to accommodate another client, another project, that sort of thing. So when you start thinking about things moving around like that and connections moving around, it makes it challenging. That's what they're talking about in this chapter. How do I deal with that? The flexible nature of these means that any fixed wiring that I would normally use is not going to be practical, may not even work to bring a solid conductor horizontal cable into here. When it's constantly getting moved, it's going to get broken, kind of thing. So I have to deal with that, and there's some ways to deal with that. And there's another thing they mention in here. This furniture is often moved, rearranged, and sometimes it's even this furniture is in place before we can do any wiring to the building. So it makes it extra challenging. Well, if you go back in time, 568A, 568B, original, cabling standards for horizontal cabling. Horizontal wiring is run between telecommunication room and the work area outlet. The outlet was presumed to be permanently mounted in an office wall or on an office wall, and they expected to be with a relatively short distance of the actual computer. So a short patch cable from the outlet out to the computer. This whole arrangement that we've been talking about all along. This was kind of the assumption that all the wiring is going to be. Well, that's not feasible in a open office environment like that where you have cubicles. This isn't feasible because this length here from the computer to the outlets might be a lot longer, and I might be moving this part of my wiring all the time. It might break. So with your modern offices, and actually here's a couple more challenges too. I almost jumped ahead of myself. Power and data are typically run near each other in the same channels in my cubicles. The furniture is often assembled before I even run data and power to things. A lot of times the ceiling tiles are in place, the walls are finished, carpet's laid. All that stuff's in place before we can actually get the data wiring into things. So a lot of challenge, and actually here's another example of a cubicle, bays and everything else. Lots of challenge to get. As you see, there's no real walls until we get to the outside, but we got to get data drops to all these cubicles. Pretty tricky. And again, here's another example of showing data, phone, all that kind of good stuff in a channel on the cubicle. Presents lots of challenges. So I really do have to run my data cables most times after the fact. The best I can do is pre-wire by running cable to where the cubicles are probably going to be and leave a service coil, a large service coil up in the ceiling, and then I'm going to back up here and then run it down through one of these channels and into the cubicle. But I still need to kind of approximate where all these are going to be and then route the cabling through. So it's a challenge dealing with this. Again, as these modules get rearranged, things are getting moved. I need to pull the cabling out, move them around, reroute the cabling. Again, things are going to break, things are going to get damaged, so I have to come up with other ways to do this. Well, TSB 75 came along after 568A standard was approved and ratified. TSB 75 came along to saying, hey, we have recommendations on how to deal with this. And this standard actually got incorporated into, later on, 568B, and now it's part of 568C, and it's actually included in 568C1. And actually, let me pop over to our standard real quick. If I go to 568C1 and I go towards the end, I will see there's provisions for open office wiring. Let me just scroll down there to show you. I'm going to scroll down to the end. Here's the open office cabling MUTOA, as well as the consolidation point. So this TSB 75 that they talk about in the book has been incorporated into the future standards and is even part of our 568C1 as we look at it. Well, the TSP 75 recommended two things. Solution one, multi-user telecommunication outlet assembly solution, or the consolidation point solution. And that's actually the two I just scrolled to the standard to show you. These have been incorporated. Well, the multi-user telecommunication outlet assembly, or MUTOA, I'm basically going to place the work area near where my computers are going to be and use a long patch cable to from the computer up to the outlet. So I'm going to put an outlet near, but I'm going to end up using long patch cables, if you will. And the long patch cables might actually go from above the ceiling down through the channels into the computer. And that long patch cable, being flexible, would be able to take some installing, pulling out, and not break as easily. The other solution is the consolidation point, where horizontal cabling goes to some kind of termination block, almost like a secondary patch panel, and then I run cabling out to the work area. So let's look at these a little bit deeper, if you will. If I look at the MUTOA option, multi-user telecommunication outlet assembly, I'm going to basically have longer patch cables, is what it really amounts to. So I have horizontal cable run that's going to be shorter, that runs out to an outlet somewhere, consolidation area of multiple outlets, and then I run a long patch cable from there out to the work area. So if I take a look, and actually the standard gives me a formula to figure out the length of my horizontal cable and how long my patch cables can be. So what you start seeing is, if I look here in the middle, if I have a horizontal cable run of 80 meters, I can have a patch cable up to 13 meters. They're giving me guidelines to say, look, if you need longer work area cables, you can do that. You just need to reduce the length of your horizontal cable run. These are all guidelines to make it work. So what's going to happen is I'm going to reduce the length of my horizontal cabling so that I can use longer patch cables to, again, go from the computer through channels, maybe up a pole above the ceiling to an outlet that's mounted up there above the ceiling. So here's what the standard shows you. From my horizontal closet, this is where the patch panel would be. I have horizontal cabling out to outlets, multi-user telecommunication outlets, and these might actually be, work area outlets above the suspended ceiling. And then I'm going to use long patch cables possibly to go down through, channels or poles into the cubicle and to the workstation. That is one solution that I could use. Here's another way to show the same thing. Patch panel in my closet, long, horizontal cable runs shorter than normal, out to a multi-user telecommunication outlet assembly, and then I'm running longer patch cables out to my workstations. And this all makes logical sense as long as I balance the length of my horizontal cable run, shorten that up while I'm making the patch cables longer. This would be an example of something that could be used for MUTOA. As you see here, I have a couple horizontal cable connections. I also have a couple fiber connections. Here's another one I could use. And again, this could be installed. Let me back up here to where we had our cubicles. Let me back up real quick. This could be mounted up here, on the wall, and this handles a couple of these cubicles here. Long patch cables go above the ceiling, down the pole and into the computers. Above the ceiling, down through the pole and into the computers kind of thing. You could do that if these things are getting moved around a lot. So there's your MUTOA option. The other one is your consolidation point. This is the other one that can be used. The consolidation point now is almost like having two patch panels, if you will. What's going to happen now is I'm going to go from my horizontal closet patch panel here, horizontal cables out to another termination block. Again, almost like a second patch panel. And then I run out another horizontal cable run out to my outlets that would be maybe in the cubicle walls. In this secondary, and here's another example of the same thing they're showing you, almost like a patch panel here, out to patch panel here, out to outlets, and then to workstations. So this is adding an additional additional connection point. But these can be in this format. I can be installing a consolidation point above the ceiling where horizontal cabling comes in here, horizontal cabling comes out here to outlets. Again, this might work better in some other office environment to do that. And here's one that would be installed below the floor, if you will. That could be below the floor. So there's my two options for my standard handling open office wiring. They mention here with fiber optic as well. The problems with copper, termination point, impedance mismatches, near and crosstalk, all that good stuff. The problems for fiber is really small amounts of attenuation. And really the only limitation here is cable lengths on this one for fiber optic. And I can use the same Mutoa. As we saw that one Mutoa earlier had actually fiber drops in. I can actually use that same kind of thing. They remind us when we're dealing with cabling in an office environment, I should be trying to separate my data and my power, as we said before, 2 to 5 inches. If I can, try to get them in separate runs or separate channels, but if they have to go through cubicle walls, keep them 2 to 5 inches apart. If I need to cross my data lines, if my data lines need to cross power lines, cross them at 90 degrees. That way I'm minimizing the amount of area that the data cable is exposed to the power cable. I'm reducing the amount of interference that I would pick up. And again, they're reminding us, 2 to 5 inches separation between power and data. That's going to help with interference and noise. All right, so there's our open office environment and our two main solutions to do that, handle this open office environment of cubicles and things moving around.